What's up guys, Xell here, and today we'll be talking about Phase 3 of the Dragonsong's Reprise raid, where we fight Estinien? Nidhogg? Anyways, my group is currently progging this part of the fight, but Regar Nasaaj, who's been super hardcore progging the fight, allowed me to use their team's footage in order to help me make this guide. You can find their streams in the link in the description. If you're interested in watching my group prog, also check out my Twitch channel, which will also be in the description. To talk about this phase of the fight, this phase is essentially made up of only two mechanics. However, the first mechanic is particularly incredibly tricky, with lots of possible variations that each player in your party will need to be comfortable with to solve the mechanic. The only prep we'll need for this section of the fight is to have corner pairs. You can reuse your partner pairs from part 2 with Thordan, however it's a good idea to place melees with ranged players, so in this case we want our healers to be with melee DPS and tanks with our ranged DPS. This will help for a later mechanic. Alright, let's get started. The first thing to be prepared for is Final Chorus, when Nidhogg jumps down and Stardivers the group. This hits incredibly hard and will need at least bare minimum of 40% if not more total mitigation to survive. After the boss lands, they will begin autoing the main tank. Be careful as these autos cleave behind the main tank and hit very hard. Then we will begin what is essentially 90% of what makes this phase difficult. Dive from Grace, or as my group likes to call it, Wyrmhole. You know, like W-Y-R-M, get it? Like anyways. First, I'll explain the order in how things happen, since a lot of things happen very quickly. As the cast finishes, each player will get a set of numbers. 3 players will have a 1, 2 players will have a 2, and 3 players will have a 3. Then another set of debuffs will go out, which will either be a prey marker or an arrow. In each grouping with an arrow, there will always be another opposing arrow, and there can be up to 2 pairs of arrow markers. Each marker represents a dive, but the way towers will spawn behaves differently depending on your debuff. If it's a prey marker, it's simple. The tower will appear directly where you were dove on. If you have an arrow, the tower will appear in the direction of the arrow and your character's facing. The distance the tower appears is about the diameter of Einsteinhogg's targeting circle. Nidhogg will then cast Gnash and Lash, or Lash and Gnash. Gnash is an AoE directly on his hitbox, so players must stay out, and Lash is a donut AoE where players must be inside his hitbox. The timing of how the AoEs come out is a little unintuitive, as these AoEs don't happen in relation to the cast bar. Instead, when the cast finishes, the first set of debuffs will have counted down, and the players with the 1 marker will be dove on by clones and leaving behind towers. As this is happening, the rest of the players must be stacked, as there will be an Eye of the Tyrant shared AoE that will go out as well. This hits very hard, so plan to have around 40% mitigation and shields to be safe. After the dives finish, the first set of Gnash or Lash will happen. Then towers will appear and will need to be soaked. After these towers are soaked, players must then be ready for the second part of Gnash or Lash. As this is happening, the clones will have appeared where the towers were soaked and will cast a line AoE at the nearest player. The nearest player, who should be the soaking player, will have to bait these AoEs outside to not hit the group. Then the players with the 2 markers will need to set their towers down. After this, the line AoEs will fire. As this is happening, the boss will cast another Gnash or Lash. The towers will have spawned from the 2 markers and need to be soaked, and the same baited AoEs need to be pointed away from the group. At this point, the Gnash and Lash will have finished casting, and the third set of towers will be placed, and another heavy hitting shared AoE stack will happen. Same as the first set of towers after the dives, the first part of Gnash or Lash will happen. Towers will appear, and then players must move for the second set of Gnash or Lash. And as always, once the towers are soaked, the clones must be baited to point their line AoEs outwards. Okay, did you guys catch all of that? This is a very difficult mechanic where there are tons of variables in play. Each player must be comfortable with what each of the number rules must do, and account for having the arrow debuffs. On top of that, the damage on the stacked AoEs are very high and must be mitigated properly or you will die. Any player that dies in the middle of the mechanic will likely cause a wipe, so mistakes are highly punishing too. Yeah, this mechanic is hard. Not to mention this phase is considered to have a pretty tight DPS check, so yeah, this mechanic is hard. Luckily, there's a simulator that I highly recommend for teams to use and will save you a lot of prog time. I'll link it in the description of the video. Okay, with that, let's actually start talking about how we're going to solve this mechanic. To start off, you'll need to set some priorities and ways to communicate who is taking what tower. My group always has the arrows on the east and west of the boss. The up arrow will always be on the east side, and the down arrow will always be on the west side. This simply just helps understand placements without having to scream at each other. It's also a good idea to try and pre-position in the stack to help indicate who is going where. This is particularly helpful for the 2 and 3 marked people. Even better, if you're in voice call, then you can just call it out. Rather than talking through the crazy amount of layered mechanics in this phase again, I'll go through the mechanic from the lens of each number to help you understand what to do in each number role. So let's start with number 1. As Dive from Grace is being cast, number 1 should remain south of the boss and then move to the cardinals. If there are arrows in the number 1 group, adjust so that the forward arrow is east and the backwards arrow is west. Then stay in your position as Nash and Lash is being cast and drop the towers. Then dodge the first part of Nash and Lash. As this is happening, return to the group. Stay stacked with the group as you dodge the second part of Nash or Lash. At this point, the second towers are being baited. Once they are dropped, the number 1 group will take the towers. To keep things simple, if you baited your tower east or west, you will take the corresponding second towers. This means the south number 1 player will be waiting to soak the third set of towers. The east and west number 1s will soak the towers, and make sure to remember to point the line AoEs out to avoid the group. After baiting them out, return to stacking with the rest of the group. At this point, the east and west number 1s will be finished with their responsibility and must simply dodge the second Nash and Lash with the group. For the south number 1, you will dodge the first part of Nash and Lash again with the group, but now you'll be responsible for the south third tower. Soak this tower while dodging the second part of Nash and Lash, and then remember to bait your clone out, and that finishes the mechanic. Now let's talk about number 2s. During Dive from Grace, number 2s will move and stack with the rest of the group on the north side of the boss. Here you must dodge both parts of Nash and Lash with the group. After Nash and Lash is completed, move northwest or northeast to bait your tower away from the group. If you don't have arrows to predetermine where each number 2 is going, you can pre-position a little away from the stack just to indicate where you intend on going. Once the tower is baited, return to the group stack and wait for the second Nash and Lash cast. Wait for the third set of towers to be baited, and then you must dodge the first part of Nash and Lash while moving to soak your tower. Again, if you are the east side number 2, then you will soak the east third tower, and similarly, if you are on the west side number 2, you will soak the west third tower. Then soak the tower while moving to dodge the second part of Nash and Lash and wait for the clone to appear. Bait the clone outwards, and that finishes the mechanic. Lastly, let's talk about number 3s. During Dive from Grace, number 3s will also move and stack with the group on the north side of the boss. After the shared AoE, number 3s will move to soak the number 1 towers. Remember to dodge the first part of Nash or Lash as you move towards the tower. Then soak the tower while respecting the second part of Nash or Lash. As always, make sure to bait the clones outwards. Then after baiting the line AoEs, move to dodge them. You can continue to hover around the spot while everything else is happening. Then during the second Nash or Lash, make sure to go where you need to so your tower is baited correctly. Bait your towers and then move for the first part of Nash or Lash. Return to the group as you dodge the second part of Nash or Lash. This ends your responsibility for the mechanic. Hopefully going through each of the numbers helps outline what your individual responsibility looks like. This is one hell of a mechanic and will require people to really understand it and study. After the final AoEs are casted, Nidhogg will cast Drachenlance where they will turn a random direction and cleave approximately 60 degrees in front of him. This cleave can also be easily outranged. This cast comes out very fast, so don't fall asleep at the wheel after Wyrmhole. After Drachenlance will be another set of mechanics that I will call Megatowers. There will be 8 towers scattered on each of the inner cards. Each corner can spawn with 1 to 4 towers and needs the appropriate amount of people to soak them. After these are soaked, 4 clones will dive like in Wyrmhole. 3 of them will need to be baited out for their line AoEs, again, just like Wyrmhole. One of the clones and the boss themselves will put out 2 tank buster tethers which each tank must grab.
To solve this mechanic, first move to your pre-assigned pairs from the preparation. This should mean that each corner has a ranged and a melee player. The melee players will be responsible for moving and adjusting so that each corner has the appropriate amount of players, and the ranged players will be responsible for soaking towers and baiting the line AoEs after. This way, each player in the party can have the most amount of uptime possible. The melee players should simply move to adjacent towers as necessary. The only time you will need to move across is for a 4-stack tower on the opposite corner, so be aware of that. The ranged players will simply anchor in each corner and bait the line AoEs directly out. Doing so will leave the cardinals and the inside of the boss's hitbox safe. When the tethers appear, designate one tank to take the center tether, and the other tank will grab a corner tether. I recommend the boss tether to be tanked in the center, and the corner directly on the clone as there will be no line AoE on this clone. The mitigation timing here is actually tricky as it snapshots far earlier than you would expect, so make sure to pop them early.
After this, the boss will auto-attack 5 times and cast another Drachenlance. Again, don't fall asleep and simply move out of the way. As soon as Drachenlance is casted, the boss will then cast Revenge of the Horde, which serves as the Enrage of the phase. Although this phase is not incredibly long, the DPS check is quite tight and the Wyrmhole mechanic will serve as a major wall for progging purposes. Again, I highly suggest spending some raid time playing with the simulator to get really comfortable with the Wyrmhole variations. And that's it for the guide. I hope this guide is helpful and I wish you guys luck as you prog this insane fight. As always, ask me questions in the comments or on my streams, and if you found this guide helpful, please like the video and subscribe, it helps a lot. I'll catch you guys in the next phase of the fight. Bye!